I'm here today with the lovely and talented Charlotte Wessels to talk about Tales from 6 Feet Under Volume 2. Makes me wonder, will there be a Volume 3? Out October 7th on Napalm Records. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thanks. I'm busy with the preparations of the show and the release and everything. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. The first thing that I noticed when I was listening to this album is that you went with Volume 2. And I'm thinking, you know, you're such a creative person, such a creative mind, and you went
Why
with
use the
perhaps a
same
very
title twice?
creative album title. So why Volume 2 and not go with something completely different?
I feel like Volume 1 and Volume 2 are kind of chapters of the same book, in the sense that they were both written in these two very weird years. They were weird for everyone, I think, for me too. And I feel that with the first live show coming up for me is very symbolic. I think that that's like kind of an official coming out of the basement. I kind of also started feeling like if I'm going to put out an album after this, I might want to you know, replace programmed drums and have them recorded elsewhere. And then I got kind of sentimental, like I could kind of close off this time of acting like a hermit and doing all of the things alone in the basement by giving the second year of that a record of its own as well, and under the same moniker, sort of. So that's why Tales from 6 Feet Under 2. And it's not like new songs will not be written here, but yeah, I do think that something next could look a bit different. Yeah.
So when you have a chance to look back at those 2 years, but specifically at the work that you did in Volume 1 and the work that you did in Volume 2, how much do you see your growth, not just as an artist, but as a person between both records?
I think in the sense that I've been looking to collaborate again a bit. I think that is kind of a healthy sign, I guess. But that's not even really true, because when I started working on the songs from Tales Volume 1, I didn't even have like a split to recover from yet. So I don't know. I think that a lot of the changes from the first album to the second are due to the fact that I've been doing this for mostly, like, it's what I've been doing most for the past 2 years. So I do hear the differences in the choices that I make in the arrangement. I do things in terms of programming that are maybe a little bit more sophisticated. But also, since, you know, my pile of almost ready songs to finish had kind of dried up, I had to work even faster. So I've also used like a little bit more things like production loops and stuff like that. So it's really, both albums are just really like a purge of I have these feelings and I have to get them out, and I have to do it within a month. But yeah, and I guess the other big difference is that's not really a difference in terms of me as a person, but more a difference between the two records is the fact that whereas for the first record, while I was writing a part of that, I was still indie lane. So if I had like a metal idea, I would not put that on a Patreon, because I would save that for maybe hopefully future Delane songwriting sessions. And that's something that for the second year I didn't do. So there's a little bit more of the heavy ideas on this album as well, which yeah, is maybe more what people expected from me in the first place when they listened to Volume 1. But so yeah, lots of things in common, a lot of different things.
And speaking of the things in common and the different things, I thought you captured that feeling extremely well in the artwork, because both records have similar artwork, and yet there's something different in there. So it was that also part of the whole process when you think of your music, of your art that you're creating. Does it go beyond the borders of the music, the lyrics, and the arrangements? Does the artwork play an important role for you?
definitely. Like with the first artwork, I really wanted to catch the vibe of what I was doing and how I was feeling. And I wanted to incorporate all of the things that I was thinking of when I thought of this space and what I've been doing here. And that's something that I spoke about with Maarten Donders, who made the illustrations for both of the covers. With a lot, but with the second cover, well, there was obviously a change in my appearance that that I wanted on there as well. But it's also, I felt like, because the first one was very much playing with the theme of Tales from 6 Feet Under, very much with the being underground, like gravestones, very, very dark. But I was thinking like, okay, but what is the state that I am in now? Like, what is it signifying now? And I already knew about, you know, the fact that I was going back to the stage, that I was kind of mentally more or less a little bit ready. Oh, we're coming to the personal changes anyway. So I was kind of more or less more ready to start working with people again. So we wanted to do like the crystal ball, and we wanted to put like a big sun in the middle to kind of signify like the coming out of the basement and signify like the light. So yeah, there's, in terms of artwork, there's definitely a shift from kind of that dark side to something brighter. Even if the music is still, you know, quite heavy-hearted, but in terms of artwork, there is light. Yeah,
there's light at the end of the tunnel, at least in the artwork. This record, it surprised me in terms of how synth dependent, I hate to use that word, but how synth heavy, let's use that word, how synth heavy this record is, and how much you were able to do with it, because it still feels diverse, even though you're using one single element quite a lot throughout each and every single song. So how do you navigate these turbulent waters of using that one element, but still not making every song sound exactly the same?
Well, I think like most of the times, my songs are still like the feeling, it starts from the feeling, and that usually goes to a melody and lyrics for me. So that's often still where the song starts from. And those are very different things for all of the songs. And for me, they really feel as like the skeleton of the song that decide where the rest is going to go. And then I have a preference for certain sounds, of course, but I do feel like I have that song, and then I kind of dress it up with whatever I want to dress it up with. And I do love a synth. So, and of course, it's also because I do feel like I'm getting a lot more diversity from, so if you're a guitar player, and you're a good guitar player, and maybe you also have like a lot of different guitars, and you really know how to make your guitar sound a million different ways, then you can get a lot of diversity from your guitars. I program, like there's been two, like Against All Odds, so Timo, and there's also part of Timo on Human to Ruin. Otherwise, the guitars are programmed by me, and I feel like that is still limiting in some way. And electronic sounds, making music electronically, it has a lot less limitation. Like there is a lot more than you can, it already doesn't sound like anything, so you can make it sound like anything, you know. Well, if I want to make a guitar, like my main challenge is I need it to sound like a real guitar, because I don't want that like super programmed sound. So for me, it's also like the synths offer like a wider range of sounds for me to work with. No.
And you were still able to create a very warm, organic, earthy experience, which once again is something that when I think of synthesizers, I don't think of earth and an earthy experience or an organic sound. So does that come, that feeling of being in touch with something underneath you, does that come from that starting process that you mentioned in terms of the melody and lyrics?
Yeah, maybe, but I do also feel like there are certain electronic sounds that I associate with natural elements, so to speak, more than certain instruments. Because when I think about certain instruments, there's a very concrete image in my head. Well, for example, like take an electronic sounds like a theremin or something like that, or like whooshy sounds. They sound like the wind. They don't sound like an instrument. They don't sound like a piano. They don't sound like the thing they look like. Sometimes it's easier to approach a sound that you've heard, which is not necessarily music, like an ambient sound. Sometimes it's easier to approach with electronics than it is with an acoustic instrument, if that makes sense. Yeah. But not all of the time.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not always the case, and from me, I think it comes down to perception in terms of what you perceive a certain instrument to give you. And I felt like with this record, you showed me that I was wrong. Like my perception was wrong about the tool that you were using. That you could do a lot more with that tool than what my mind was thinking that you could do beforehand.
I think I'll take that as a compliment.
Yes, it's definitely a compliment. It's meant as a compliment. And the other thing that I noticed about this, I mean, this record is a record of dualities, at least from my perspective when I was listening to it. Because the other thing that I took from it is that it felt very stripped down. It felt very bare bones. It felt very you, like it was you without a cloth in front of you, like you were just putting everything, all the cards on the table, as you had done with Volume 1, but perhaps a little bit more so I felt with this record. But at the same time, as I'm listening to it, I can feel all the different layers, all the texture that you have in your music, that you have in your songs. How do you see this album? Is it, in your view, that more of a stripped down record, or that's just the appearance that it gives?
No, it is in a way stripped down, and not necessarily in, you know, the amounts of sounds or layers that I use, because there is quite a bit going on there. But there is, in the sense that, you know, I did have that one song per month deadline for myself. And in order to stick to that, with Volume 1, I maybe had a little bit more songs that I kind of had already worked on for a while, and then I had to Patreon, so I had a place to put them. But for this record, most of it was really gotta write a song now, it's gonna be done in a few days, and it felt like a purge, you know, because I also had a lot of feelings in the last year. And so yeah, it was really getting those feelings out, and not second guessing it. I've worked hard, but I also worked fast. Yeah. So it is, in that way, maybe stripped down, in the sense that it's unpolished. Like it's
Wow.
Yeah.
And moving on from the sound to your voice, I mentioned this on my review, that I felt like you were free, unrestrained, and not to say that you weren't in Volume 1, but it just came across completely different on this record. It just felt like you were just not singing to an audience, but rather singing to yourself. Like I said, perhaps more than in the first volume. Where did that come from?
I think I felt very free, especially maybe in the last months, a little bit less, because I already had the prospect of performing the songs live at one point. But before that, I was really just sitting with whatever voice I woke up with, and then singing the songs or shouting the feelings, without also really thinking about, oh my God, I have to do this live. You know, I regret that for some parts now, because now I have to do it live. So there's parts on there where I was like completely like unhinged and screaming a lot louder and higher than I would if I was like, I have to do this 6 days in a row on tour, you know. So in that sense, I did feel really free in what I could do with my voice for these songs, because they were not necessarily intended for the stage, but now I have to sing them on the stage. So now I kind of hate myself.
Now you have
No, it's fine. There's only one or two parts where I'm like, oh, this is going to be hard work, but that's fine. That's a challenge. That's how we grow.
Is it liberating or frightening when you as an artist have a record like this where your voice is the center stage and everything else is there in order to complement your vocal performance? What of those feelings do you get the most?
No, it's nice. It's I don't ever consider that as a source of pressure, and maybe I should, because a lot of what's on here is first takes, and then a million backing vocals, so there's still a lot of work in the vocal arrangements, but the lead vocals are often just, I write it, I sing it, and maybe I sing it 3 times and I pick the best one, but often I stick with the vocal that I record when writing it. So also that is quite unpolished in a way. I did a few retakes for when I decided that it was going to be on an album. I did a few times when there was a retake where I got the mix and I was like, maybe this is a bit too raw. But yeah, I don't really consider it as extra pressure, the fact that it's built around the vocals. I guess that's just my natural way of doing it. And actually right now I'm feeling pressure for the rest of the arrangements, because this is kind of my these albums. It sounds like I've been doing this a long time for the fact that I have 2 albums, but I mean, it's been 2 years, and the first song on the first album was the first song that I ever produced myself. So when I started out, I was just happy that rather than on the production side of things, like I always wrote, with chords in mind and with arrangements in mind, but I was never actually the one who put them in. So on the first record and with the first couple of songs, I was just very happy, like I did everything in this, and then it didn't really matter to me how I did all of the rest. Now that I'm doing it a little bit longer, I'm starting to feel more pressure, actually not necessarily on the vocals, but on the rest of the arrangements, because also with doing this pretty fast, like I've been doing things like I've used some production loops and stuff like that. And now that I'm doing this for a longer time, I feel like I should actually put more time in that and have more individuality in all of the parts of the instrumentation. Could you excuse me for 2 seconds, because I don't know what that is, and maybe it's something important that I need to pick up. I'll be back in 2 seconds. I'm so sorry about that. I'm back. It was food.
No problem.
I didn't expect them to actually be on time.
When you said that you were in the basement, you were literally in the basement. All right.
I am in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah, you're literally in the basement.
This is why it's called the 6 Feet Under studio. It's almost 7 feet deep, but these are literally tools from 6 feet under. Wow, I shouldn't have ran. Okay.
Well, I'll ask you a question. We'll take you some time gives you some time to drink and catch your breath. You had some guest musicians on this record. Will we see more of that in the future as you move away from those 6 feet under into perhaps a different style of record, a different style of offering to the listeners? Will that open the doors for you to work with other people that you would like to work with?
Yeah, I do think so. I think it would be nice if I well, like I just said, I would like to put more effort into like all of the different parts of the instrumentation, and I think that a part of that is also taking the things that I programmed and bringing them to folks who for the electronic stuff, it's not always necessary. But for the drums, for guitars, for bass, for piano, for all of those things that a human could actually play better than I play or program it, it would make sense to have them look at the parts and record those So I do think that that door is
It's going to be opened.
yes.
Uh,
I think so. Like this is all like I'm working fast, so and now that I have like a few deadlines that I'm kind of working towards, like I feel like I'm really working towards that show. And then after that show, I'll probably be like, okay, so what do I want to do for what's next? But this is also weird because now Tales Volume 2 isn't even out yet, and I'm already thinking like, what's next? You know? So
but I think that's the creative mind. It never stops. You're always looking, not necessarily backwards, but you're always looking forwards in terms of what's the next thing that's going to motivate you to walk into your studio and do something insane, to do something crazy. I have to ask you about my favorite song on this record, and that's A Million Lives. What's the backdrop to that track? Because it hit me like a ton of bricks.
It was inspired by a book I read. It's called The Midnight Library, and it's dramatic. It's about a woman who takes her own life and then ends up in a library with all of the lives that she could have led if she had made like different choices. And she basically gets to open every book and like live a chapter out of that life. And I think it's a metaphor for something that a lot of us maybe do at many points in our lives, and they go like, you know, what if this, what if that, what if what if in high school I would have done this, what if. So I thought that it was a very interesting premise, and that it's not necessarily from a desire to live a different life, but also like the thought from like, out of a million lives, like this is the one that I have now. And that's I thought it was an interesting thought. And I don't remember what element I started with this one, but yeah, just the out of a million lives, how could this be? That was kind of the thingy that got stuck in my head, and that I started writing from. So yeah, that was the general idea behind that one, for starting that one.
I don't think that it's not about being satisfied with the life that you have. It's rather about the curiosity of what could have been, and it's almost like reaching into the unknown. That's what drives you, because what you know, you already know, but what's inspiring is what could be out there for you. So that's one of the reasons I thought the song was really interesting, and it really hit home, because I do sometimes wonder about those what ifs creep up in the back of your mind. One last question for you, and that is, considering how busy you are, what do you do for fun? What are Charlotte's hobbies? Do you like to plant trees? Do you have pets? Like, what do you do to unwind from all the craziness of the music world?
Go on. I do like to read, but I don't do it enough. I like so I have a lot of houseplants. I really like quality time with my houseplants, you know, taking my little scissors and going by any plant and seeing like whether nobody has bugs, no one has dead leaves, or are you thirsty, are you hungry? Like, I take care of them. And I also just like hanging with the cat and the husband, and you know, just having some quality time that we don't have enough. So yeah, actually my relaxing time is quite homey. I also really I listen to a lot of murder podcasts, and I'm sorry about that. Basically like a fantastic evening for me is repotting plants in front of like a horrible horror movie. That is like, with a glass of wine, that's like me so happy.
Sounds like all of these clashing worlds coming together.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in that chaos, you find the simplicity of your life.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. Charlotte, thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to see you, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. So let's wait for the next record, and let's hope it's not volume 3.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the interview. It was lovely talking to you again. And yeah, hopefully until next time.
All right. Take care. All the best.
All right. Bye-bye.